Begin the current Daf, Mesech the Succah Daf Gimel. Begin 5 lines down at the top of the Yomid, where the Gemara continues the discussion of the previous Daf regarding the prohibition about making schach out of bundles, and we qualify that teaching on today's Daf. Shiur's corresponds to Bekazik and Cheskel to enter Daf Chaim. Appreciate you joining us for today's Daf. Wherever you are in the world, it might be in Europe, wherever it is, appreciate you joining us. Some things we're discussing today's Daf are what type of bundles are permitted to use a schach, and how many pieces are considered a bundle. And then, parenthetically, we get into a discussion what type of mori can be used for the mitzvah on Pesach. And finally, regarding the tumah status of stems and other non-edible portions of produce. So the key to the concept we're discussing today's daf are Shem Levi. You have a name of something, and then you have a secondary name to it, if that's considered as the same species or not. Ezai is hyssop. 4 times in the Torah we are obligated to use the hyssop. And we get into a discussion regarding as it's made into a bundle. Tzvi V'Dorvani is a hut that the bird hunters made out of willow branches. Yodois are the handles that we discussed regarding stems of different vegetation, and that's halacha regarding the tumah, where it combines together with the food item to be makabel or to convey tumah. And tumas oil is when something is under the same covering as something else, and there's tumah in that area, that everything in that area becomes tumah. So we begin the current daf, 5 lines down at the top of the Yomid, Daf Yud Gimel. Again, we had said in the previous daf that bundles schach may not be used midrabanan. That was the theme of our previous Mishnah. If you have bundles that you put on top of the sukkah, those are going to be invalid. We said mishum gezeres oitzim. So that halacha, the Gemara continues. I'm going to begin with that. It says Hayaf kusa de dikla. Kusa de dikla comes out of a palm tree when it's very close to the ground. There's like these different protrusions all around. So this picture illustrates this pretty nice. You see a palm tree. You see at the bottom of the palm tree, there's these little stalks that are coming out. So he says that in Sachabo you could make the schach out of these items. And what's the chiddush in this halacha? Avagav da'gidi, although that these branches, these stalks they're tight, they're attached to these branches together. So they appear like bundles, which we had said you can't make schach out of. These things that come bundled together. It's like from the same bottom, you have many of these pieces that are like weed-like type of protrusions, and it's a bundle, it's a bunch of them together. So that's the chiddush, that yes, you could use it for schach, that avagav degidi, although it's bound together, eged b'dei shemayim lo shmei eged, a heavenly made bound bundle is not considered in this isser, the rabbanon, of making a bundle. And not only that, even more, is that okay, so it's connected, it's bundled from the bottom, but then a person goes ahead and he bundles it now, the branches from the top, because he wants them to lay down, because they spread out as the picture illustrates. Although they're connected on the bottom, but they spread out into different directions, and it doesn't really close up the holes of the schach. So the person now is taking this kusa de dikla, and now he's binding it, he's tying it together on the top. Even that wouldn't make it into quote unquote a bundle, which is problematic. Why? Because igud bechad, anything that's a singular thing which is connected together and it's already intrinsically bound. So when you're binding a singular thing, leish me'eged, it's not considered binding something until you put something else in with it and bind it together. Only that will be considered as a bound thing. So therefore, the whole gezer we said was gezeres oitzer, that you might come to use this thing, which we said on the previous stuff, what's the problem with it? But that's only when it's a bundle. Here it's not considered a bundle. A, because it's b'dei shemayim, this is bundled together from nature. And secondly, even if you bind it, it's not considered bound because it's a singular thing. It's considered as one thing because it's already bound from b'dei shemayim in its natural state. So it wouldn't be considered as a bundle. Similarly, Rav Chizda ben Ravina bar Shili says the same thing but regarding a different entity. Hani dukri dekani, these cane stalks, which is similar to the case of kusa de dikla. This is from reeds, and this is of a palm tree. But this is like you see the picture here, the stalks of the cane plants, where it's separate stalks, but it comes out from the same. It's connected on the bottom. So he says, "Mesachimbo, you can make schach out of it." Although they're bound together, if it's naturally bound, that's not considered as a bundle. And moreover, even though let's say, okay, fine, it's connected to the bottom, but it's starting to spread out. The guy wants to make sure he can make bundles of schach. That's also not a problem. Why? Because since it's considered as one unit, if you're going to bind it, it's not considered a bundle. A bundle has to be more than one thing together, and hence you can use it for schach. It says Gemara Tanam Hachazimah in the Brisa, the konim canes with the kronin and stalks. Nesachim behem, you could make schach out of them. But the question, first of all, is konim shita. Obviously, you could use canes, and why not? That reads like people who use the bamboo sticks. It's a regular schach. Amos says the Gemara, no, it's konim shel the kronim. What we're saying is we're talking about the canes of the stalks, which is that it comes out from the root, like many different stalks. Mesachim ben, you could use them beschach. And again, like we said before, we don't consider it as a bundle because since it's connected from the bottom, we view it as one unit and not as separate things. That concludes the discussion of the previous daf regarding this halacha of a bundle where we had a problem with Gezeres HaOitzer. That was saying that it's not considered as Gezeres HaOitzer.
Recording in progress.
So now the Gemara continues and says, once we introduced this Amoira, who we had just said a teaching from, so the Gemara says another teaching from the same Amoira. It says, he was the one who just said the halacha of Dukri Dukana, the cane stalks, and he says another unrelated halacha, but it's also regarding that of a vegetation. Hanmirirtu, regarding the lettuce, the agma that grows in a swamp, Adam Yitzib and Pesach. A person can use that type of mar in the mitzvah of mar on Pesach. So that has to give more mace for the Gemara from the mission section of the Goy. Ezav, wherever it says Ezim the Torah, which says 4 times the Torah by the Paraduma, by the Mitzayra, there's a few times in the Torah that it says Ezav. So the halacha is V'lo Ezav Yavim. Can't be the Greek Ezav, V'lo Ezav Kerchali, can't be the blue Ezav, V'lo Ezav Midbar, can't be the desert Ezav, V'lo Ezav Romi, can't be the Roman Ezav, V'lo Ezav Shishashim Levai, can't be any hyssop, which is a type of herb, that has any secondary name to it. It has to be Ezav, the stam one, the unspecified one. I ordered pizza, not pepperoni pizza, not mushroom pizza, not vegetable pizza, just pizza. So it says Ezav, it's got to be plain Ezav, nothing else. So the Gemara's question is, here also it says in the Torah, we have to have Mor al Matzim Michlu. That means to say only the plain Mor, and not Mor Da'agma, which is a Shem Levai, a secondary name. So how can you say that the Mor you could use is the Merir to Da'agma? So the Gemara gives 2 answers to that question. I'm Abai. It says, anything that its name was already different before Matan Torah, meaning it had already many different species, and it had many secondary names, like the blue Ezav, that before Matan Torah was already called the blue Ezav. And then the Torah comes along and it's very particular, because many times the Torah tells us to have Ezav, and not one time did it tell us on any one of these other names. Obviously, then, do you do a Shish L'Shem Levai, that yes, there are other secondary names, and the Torah is very particular about the generic Ezav, and that it can't have any secondary names. That's why when it says Ezav, it excludes all those other types of Ezav. But the Marirta, the Agma, this Marir, L'Nishtan, Shemayu, Koid Matan Torah Klal. It was never called this secondary name before Matan Torah. Meaning, when the Torah was given, they only had one generic name, that of Marir. When they mention the Torah, Matzim Merenim, it includes also the Merir to the Agma. The only time we exclude these other secondary names is, for some reason, the Gemara knows that what was before Matan Torah. Before Matan Torah, these Ezavs, these Hissops, were a well-known species. And the Torah doesn't say them, it's coming to exclude them. But the Mar, in those days, they only had one generic name of Mar. Later on, they started being more subcategorical definitions and saying, okay, this is the Merir to the Agma, this is this, and this is that. They find some nice Latin words to say that this is something very different than that. But in the Torah, at that point, it was only called one name Mar, and therefore that included all the types of Mar. It's not going to be excluded because it has a secondary name, because when the Torah was given, it didn't have the secondary names. Rav Amma, he says a different answer. He says, actually, Hani Merirtum, this Mar of the swamp, Stama Shemayu, actually, its real name is regular Mar. I would call it the Mar of the swamp. That's not because it's a separate species, the swamp Mar. That's just simply where it's found. But it doesn't have a separate definition or title as a different species because of the fact that it's called the Agma. It's just we call it because of where to find it, and therefore it is the Mar of the Torah, it is the Mar Stam. We're just telling you where you can find it. And therefore it's not excluded, and that's why he said that you can be Yates the Chiv of Mar on Pesach with this Merir to the Agma. Now, but going back to what we had mentioned before regarding a bundle, so how many pieces are bound together are called a bundle? So Amr Chizdi says, Igud b'chad, and we mentioned this before, if you bundle a singular thing, it's not considered a bundle, meaning for two practical applications. One, regarding the bundles of Sukkah of Schach, which from our previous Daf from the Mishnah, we had said you can't use bundles. If you tie together one bamboo stick, it doesn't make it into a bundle. And also regarding Agudas Izayv. Certain times in the Torah, we have to have, like by the Paraduma, you have to have a bundle of Hissab. Taking one Hissab and tying it together, a bundle it doesn't make. Shalish, if you take three together, Shnei Egi, that's called a bundle, so that would be possible for the halach of Schach that we said, and that would also be valid for Agudas Izayv. Shnayim machlekes Rabbi Yisrael. If you take two things, would it be for the Schach, would it be for the bundle of Hissab, that's a machlekes Tanoi Rabbi Yisrael. Where do we find this machlekes? That now, like we learned the Mishnah Mesechtes Parah. Mishnah says, mitzvahs Izayv. The mitzvah of using a bundle of Hissab by the Paraduma, which they would dip it into the thing and spray, are shleisha klachim. You have to have three sprigs, you have to have these three roots, ubehen shleisha gival, and on each one had three stems. Meaning, what that really means to say is, Rashi explains, you had one gival, one stem, for every kelach, for every root. Gival is the middle stem, which that's where it has the seed on it, like by hemp and by flax. So you have to have three roots, and each one had to have one stem. Now, Rabbi Shloimy, he says, and the Gemara is going to explain the machlekes and thus show that a bundle of two is a machlekes, if it's a bundle or not. He says the following words: "It says mitzvahs ezayv are shleisha gevalim, are these three stems, v'shiyarov, and its remnants, meaning if let's say one of them falls off at a later time, so its remnants are going to be kosher with shnayim if it has two. Now, for kardumov, don't get confused what this is. Kardumov, the stubs, is what happens is when you spray many times, so because the givalim, these stems are soft, so they break. So that's what Rabbi is saying is that kosher, that even a little bit left over in the bundle is going to be kosher, meaning as long as you have from each and every one of those that you had used, as long as you have your bundle, even if let's say the pieces are breaking off, as long as the stubs of those givalim are still there, that's going to be kosher. Okay. But says the Gemara, that's the Mishnah in Mesechtes Parah. Kasol Gedaitin. So the assumption was that this that Rav Chizda said, that when you have two givalim, that's a machlekes Rabbi Yisrael Rabbanan, if it's going to be considered as agudas ezav as a bundle or not. He was explaining the machlekes like as follows: Midishiyor of Shnayim, for the fact that Rabbi Yisrael said that the remnants of the bundle, although he said that you should have three givalim, but he says and shiyarav, but its remnants are going to be valid if it's two b'diavad. So tchilasei na mishnayim, that he was also saying that two is also going to be kosher, meaning even b'diavad, meaning to say the remnants are two, and that even although the ketchila should have three, but you could have two stalks, and that could be valid as a bundle of agudas ezav. He said you should have three givalim. Oh, that's la mitzvah. That's initially as a mitzvah ketchila, you should have three into the bundle. But the b'diavad, you should have two. In fact, Rabbi Yossi is saying three is only a mitzvah. Rabbanan shleish la'akiv. You have to say Rabbanan. They were saying that you should have three stems. That they were saying that that's ma'akiv, that's integral. Because if they would also be saying that three only as a mitzvah and not as ma'akiv, then what would Rabbi Yossi be coming to disagree? And what would be the machlekes that Rabbi Chizda saying that according to Rabbi Yossi is called the eged, but Rabbanan it's not called eged? Obviously, Rabbi Yossi wouldn't repeat the same words that Rabbanan said that when he says that you have to have three. The machlekes is, are three ma'akiv or is three only the mitzvah? If you hold it's ma'akiv like the Rabbanan, that you have to have three, okay. So therefore they say three is a bundle and two is not a bundle. Rabbi Yossi is saying that three is only the mitzvah, but two is ma'akiv, two is a bundle. That's the machlekes Tanam we had mentioned. If two is a bundle or not, is the machlekes Rabbi Yossi and Rabbanan. The problem is the Gemara says punkt fakir. But Tanya we learned a brayso. Rabbi Yossi he says ezoiv, that's tchilasei shnayim. If you have a bundle of hissab, that you start over with two, v'shiur vechad, and now one got lost. one got ruined, and now you're left with one. Puzzle, it's going to be puzzle. So too, if let's say you started with 3 azibs and 2 of them fell out of the bundle, and you're left with 1, that's also going to be puzzle. 1 is puzzle. It's not valid until you have started off with 3. In other words, initially its validation is only going to be with 3. Because less than that's not considered as the bundle, which is obviously not like what we said before, where we said according to Rabbi Yossi, then no, 2 is also a bundle, but the Evid. Here we're saying no, it cannot be called a bundle until you start off with 3, shiur v'shnayim. Meaning, if 1 falls out, okay, it was a bundle already. And 2 will remain a bundle. Shiur is different than the initial making of it. That everyone agrees that the question is, but when you make it, what's considered a bundle? Here we see clearly not what we just said before. We just wanted to interpret the machlekes that Rabbi was referring to Rabbi Yossi saying that 3 is la mitzvah. But if you made the bundle with 2, no. Okay, but that will also be considered a bundle. Meaning, if you made a bundle with 3 and 1 fell out, everyone would agree, shiur, the leftovers, okay, you made a bundle, 1 fell out, okay, it'll be a bundle. But to make the bundle, how many do you need to make the bundle? We initially thought, Rabbanan said, to make a bundle, you have to have 3. You have less than 3? No, not even the bundle, but the Evid. Rabbi Yossi was saying, you should make a bundle with 3. If you made it with 2, it's going to be valid. Here we see clearly not like that. We see Rabbi Yossi says, it's not going to be kosher, you have to start off at least with 3. If 1 falls out, no. V'shir v'shnayim. The remnants can be 2. But, and again, don't confuse this with Garduma. Garduma kosher was just, you have the same 3, it just got stubbed down, you're left with stubs, that's going to be kosher. But it seemingly this contradicts what we wanted to say before. So the Gemara says, you're right, epoch. We have to actually switch around the exact opposite. That what we had said before, we have to explain the chizah the other way around. Rabbi Yossi, according to Rabbi Yossi, shleisha is la'akev. To the contrary, Rabbi Yossi is the one that holds that you need to have 3, as he says explicitly here in this price that we just quoted, where he says it's not going to be kosher until you start over 3. And l'Rabban, according to Rabbanan, shleisha is la'mitzvah. They're the ones that hold that, okay, initially we want you to start with 3 to make a bundle. If you start off a bundle with 2, no, that's going to be also kosher with the Evid. So that's the machlekes. Send them the other way around. Just the exact opposite. We thought the Rabbanan were the ones who held that 3 is ma'akev, and Rabbi Yossi was saying 2. And then we say, no, Rabbi Yossi is the one who holds you need to have 3, and he holds 2 is not kosher, and it's not a bundle. And Rabbanan holds 2 is a bundle. And by the time you still do it in the brisa, not like a question, but it's called b'nichusa, where obviously the Rabbanan are the tan of this brisa, because according to Rabbi Yossi, he holds 3 is ma'akev. We see in this brisa not like that, and that must be like to Rabbanan. What does this brisa say? An ezav that's chilas shnayim. If you have a bundle that you start off, you initially only tie together 2 of these stems, so that's going to be kosher. And so to be shiur v'echad. If you have, let's say, a leftover, meaning 1 falls out, that's also going to be kosher. And ve'ina pasal, we're not going to say it's initially going to be pasal. Only if you started off with 1, that's going to be a problem. But if you started with 2, that's going to be kosher. That's the machlekes. The Rabbanan say clearly in this brisa that 2 is okay. The Rabbi Yossi had said before that no, 2 is not okay, it has to be 3. That's the machlekes if 2 is considered as a bundle or not. Now the problem is, the Gemara assumes right now that the end of this wording of the brisa is that the shiurim are not going to be puzzle only if you're left with 1. So the Gemara asks, shiur echad? Do you think to say that if you have leftover 1 puzzle, me puzzle? But you said that if you have leftover 1, it's going to be kosher. So how do you read these words? You tell me if you have an azav that starts over 2 and you have 1 shiur, either one of those cases, starting over 2, or if let's you end over 1 is going to be kosher, and it's not going to be puzzle until you start off. That we understand. But how do you read the word shiur of echad? How can you say it's going to be puzzle? You just said a second before that if you start off a bundle with 2, which this is the Rabbanan whole 2 is also a bundle, and then 1 falls out, you're left with 1, what is that kosher or puzzle? You're contradicting yourself in the same breath. First you say it's kosher, shiur of echad, and then you say, oh, it's not puzzle until you have chilas of shiur of echad. What do you mean? I thought shiur of echad is going to be valid. So how can you say it's puzzle? So the Gemara continues, on the base, Ella, rather, it's going on in the tchila. In other words, it's saying like this. Ema say that it's tchila, the beginning, the making of the bundle is not going to be puzzle It shouldn't be read as v'shiur. Only when you started off like the leftovers, which is echad, meaning echad is kasha as a leftover, but if you make the bundle with one, that's not going to be valid. Okay, obviously we see that according to Rabbanan, when we said according to Rabbanan the Yirav Shleisha was lemitzvah, because if you would think that the Rabbanan also holds being ma'akib, then who would this brayso be? It wouldn't be like Rabbi Yissi, not like Rabbanan. And therefore we see clearly, we brought a brayso that Rabbi Yissi says you have to make a bundle of 3. Again, if one falls out, no, it's going to be b'diavad kosher even if you have a shirayim of less than that. But you have to make a bundle of 3, because less than that's not considered as a bundle. Here, the second brayso must be like the Rabbanan, which says, yeah, you can make a bundle of 2. That's considered as a bundle. If one falls out, that's also going to be okay. And when the end of the brayso says that it's not going to be possible until you have the beginning and the shirayim echad, it means if you make the beginning as the shirayim. If when you initially made the bundle, you took one stem and you tied it together, that's when it's going to be possible. But you're right, if you made a bundle of 2 and you left with one, that would be kosher according to the Rabbanan. Now, continuing on this halacha of bundles, so Darish Meremer expounded. He says, "Hani Isur Yasa Desura." These were these bundles of reeds that they would make to sell in the marketplace, and they would sell it by number. How many are you buying? So Mesachabahu, you could make the schach with these bundles, and you don't have the gzeirus or eitzer that we had. We're concerned that you might have left it there all year round, and therefore, even if you did it for Sukkot, we said no. We're concerned someone might take a bundle that was not made. It would be tasable even also. Here, this bundle, you're allowed to go ahead and use it for the schach. And the reason being is because it's not the norm to hide, to conceal, to put away these bundles, which is the whole reason why we have the chashash that it might be left for some other purpose, and therefore you're going to use it for sukkah, but tasable and asli. These bundles, avagav the ogden, although they're bound, but the only reason why we tie it together is because we want to know the number until it's sold. And when the one who buys it, when he goes to dry it out, he unties the bundle. So therefore you could use it as chaf for sukkah, and you don't have to untie the bundle, because the whole concern of the bundle was because you might have brought it there in the middle of the season, and you're going to leave it there to dry up, and then you're going to use it later on by sukkahs. But that's not the case over here. You have these carrots that they're selling in the grocery store. Why are they tying it together? No one wants it tied. Because you got to know how many. It's a bundle of 7, a bundle of 8, a bundle of 9. You tie it together. That's why it's tied, but it's only for the number. And therefore, we have no concern about the bundles that it might be left over because you've used it dry. No, whoever buys it quickly undoes the binding. He quickly unties it, and therefore doesn't have the concern about gezeirah. So it's a similar type of halacha about the binding. Amar Rav Abba says, "Hani tzrifi." These round huts, which is like a hat, which that's where the bird hunters would hide in, that they make it to urvani. They make it out of willow branches, and they would weave it from the bottom. There was a wide opening, and on the top they would tie the tops of the branches with a rope with one knot, and they just like you make these types of traps for the fish. Basically, they weave it together on the bottom and they tie it on the top. On that says Rabbi Shloimy, once you untie the upper knot from the top of that, Sharon, this is kosher to be used as schach. Meaning we're saying that it's a bundle, so you wouldn't be able to use it, but if you untie that upper knot, it's going to be valid. Says but it's still tied from the bottom by the opening where we said that they would weave it through. So why isn't that a problem? There's still a bundle. So the Gemara has 2 answers. Amar Papi says, no, the sharu. We're talking about where you untied the bottom of the thread, which it was weaving to. But the chiddush is that you don't have to remove that threading of the weave, because it's going to come undone anyway. So as long as you untie the top, and yes, you did open up the bottom weaving, you just didn't pull it out, that's considered as not bound together. However, Rabbi Shloimy, he says, you could even say that no, you didn't untie the bottom of the weaving. But any bundle that you don't normally carry like this, because the moment that you opened up the upper knot, if you're going to move this hut, it's going to become undone by itself, where this thing, that the weave on the bottom, it wouldn't be enough to hold on to the branches. So lo yishma is not considered a bundle. So although technically it's still woven together on the bottom, but since you wouldn't be able to carry it like that, therefore, even though it's still tied on the bottom, that's not going to be considered as a bundle, and therefore that would not be in the Gzeirus Ha'otzim. Here on this halacha about schach kasher and schach pasel, Amr Baba Amr Shmuel says Yirakish Amr Chachamim, the vegetables that the Chacham said Odin Yitz Ben Yidei Chamas Pesach, that you could fulfill your obligation of Mora on Pesach, like lettuce and endives and all these other ones. Mevi'in es hatumah. So they bring tumah when they're still moist, because as long as they didn't dry up, so they're going to have halacha as an oil midiraisa. So if let's say you have lettuce and there's tumah underneath, and there's something else that's tar underneath, it's going to become tummy because it's under the same oil as that piece of lettuce. And however, although generally they go together, whatever brings an oil, whatever brings tumah as an oil, it also is a chatzitza, it separates from something else. Here, it has the worst of both. It's going to bring the tumah, but it's not going to separate. The reason for that is because these mars, they're very thin. So that's why they're not going to separate in front of tumah if you went and you covered a roof with this lettuce. Why? The reason is rabbinically, because we made a gzera that you shouldn't rely on, let's say, this lettuce or endives to separate in front of tumah, because maybe you can rely on this lettuce to separate as a mechitza between tumah and tahara, even when it's going to dry up. Now, when it's still moist, you're right, biblically it's a mechitza, it separates, because it's not makabel tumah, because it's actually different versions of Rashi, either because it's not called a Michael, others say no, it is a Michael, it's because it wasn't hukshel kabel tumah. But when it dries up, it's not going to be a valid interposition, as the Gemara is going to explain, because then it actually crumbles and it falls apart. So therefore, we can't rely on it rabbinically as a chatzitza in front of tumah. And more of another interesting chiddush is who placed in the sukkah mishum aver. It invalidates by a sukkah because of airspace. Meaning, what we mean by that is aver, airspace, invalidates. If you have open airspace in the sukkah, it invalidates with a gap of 3 tvachim, as the Gemara is going to tell us later on the Yudzayin with Aleph, that the aver is b'shleisha tvachim. Now the chiddush in this over here is that we're not going to say that this lettuce, this mar, is going to be in the validation in the sukkah only like what's called schach pasel. When you have a food item that's fit to be mekabel tumah, that's called schach pasel. That only invalidates in 4 tvachim in the middle of the sukkah, and if it's 4 amas from the side, because it's a board. This food item it's called schach pasel, but it's something, it's an entity. So actually, up to 4 amas on the side, it could be like deifin akuma. You could use those pasel schach as, obviously here you can't use it as deifin akuma, but if you have schach pasel, up to 4 amas, you can make a bent wall out of it. And so also in the middle, that it's pasel is only when it's 4 tvachim. And now we're saying that this lettuce, we don't qualify as schach pasel. We qualify it as if it's ear, as if it's nothing there, and ear is more chomer than schach pasel, and it's pasel by 3 tvachim, not with 4 tvachim. Says the Gemara, my time, what's the reason? Oh, says the Gemara, I'll tell you why. When the mar dries up, parchi benafli, it disintegrates, it crumbles and it falls. So command the lesson, it's like it's not over here. So that's interesting. That explains all the halachas that we said. We said these maras that a person could use on Pesach. Yeah, it's going to bring tumah, because biblically it is considered as a oil, but it's not going to be chaytz from that tumah, and neither and it's also going to be a psul of avir in the sukkah, because of those two, it might crumble. When it dries up, it crumbles up. So we're not going to rely on it to separate from tumah, even though it should be a separation, just like it's an oil, because if it crumbles, it's not going to be over there, and the tumah is obviously going to be going on, so we can't rely on it as chatzitza. And also for the sukkah, not only can we not rely on it, but even it's going to be not even schach pasel, it's going to be like aver. Why like aver? It's not aver. It is, because when it dries up, it's going to crumble, and it's going to disintegrate, and then you're going to have aver, and therefore the psul of this mar on top of the sukkah is not with 4 tvachim, it's even with 3 tvachim, like aver is. Another teaching from V'amar Abba Amar Rav Huna, he says that habaitzer, someone harvests grapes, legas, for the wine press, meaning he wants to step on the grapes to make wine out of them. She'ein lo yadus. So the yad is a handle or a stem of a fruit. Generally, that's considered as part of the fruit and can acquire and transmit tumah because it serves the needs of the fruit. That's how normally it is. And then Rabbi says, but when you're harvesting the grapes for the wine press, the stems do not have a halacha as to bring to the food item a tumah. Why? Because what's the point of a stem? A stem, why does it bring tumah to the grape? Because it's called a yad. What's a yad? A yad is a handle. A handle assists you in utilizing that thing that it's connected to. But the grapes don't need a handle. To the contrary, he doesn't want the stems. When did we say that a yad is included for tumah in Chul Daf Kuf Yud Ches Amud Aleph? That's when you need the hand, or by a vessel, or by a food item. Over here, you don't want the handle. To the contrary, the stems would ruin it, what you want for the production. So therefore, if a tumah touches the stem, it's not going to convey tumah to the grape, to the food item, if you are harvesting it for the gas, for that of the wine press. A similar halacha, Rav Menashe bar Gada Omer Rav Huna. He says that hakoitzer, if someone harvests grain, l'schach, for the schach, he wants to use the straw as schach, so ein lo yadus. So here also, the straw is not going to bring tumah to the wheat, because he doesn't want that straw to be connected to the wheat. Because the food item, the wheat, you can't use as schach. To the contrary, if you didn't have more psilis, more straw than wheat, actually the wheat would make it possible for sukkah, because there has to be two criteria in the schach. It has to be davar desha, it's not makabel tumah, and the food item is makabel tumah, and it has to be gedulim in a karka. So therefore, you don't want the wheat in the stalk. Oh, okay. So then you don't have a yad, because we don't want this straw to be connected to the wheat. But however, says the Gemara, they don't necessarily agree. These two halachas are not necessarily the same. Why? The one that says that if you're harvesting wheat for schach, that you don't have the halachas of yad, he would hold kol shekin beitzer. He would for sure, if you're harvesting grapes for the wine press, that delay nichle, that you don't want those handles, because delay nematzi lechamri. You don't want the stems to suck up the wine and cause a loss to the wine. So for sure you don't want the stems. Okay, so you don't want it to be connected. So therefore it's not going to be a yad for the halachas to be makabel tumah. But mandam abayt t'shem liyad is according to the one that says that when you're harvesting the grapes for the wine press, that then these stems don't have a halach of yad. But even when you're harvesting the grain for the schach, that you want the straw, then that mandama holds that the straw would still have halach of yad, and it would commit tumah to the wheat. Why? Because he does want the food item that's attached to it, the l'sachmu, that it should be there when he's making his schach. Why? Why would he want the wheat? He doesn't want them to scatter. If you separate the ends of the stalks from the straw, maybe it's going to scatter. Straw could just fly away, and it's going to get lost. So he actually wants the stalk to stay with the straw so that it doesn't scatter. So we'll have the halach of yad, even though he's trying to use the straw for the schach.
Even schach.
Yeah, because you have its bottle in the psilis meruba lo eichel. Oh, says the Gemara, let's say that a Menashe bar Gada, who he says that even when you harvest the straw for schach, that it's not going to have a yad. He holds both cases don't have a yad. Let's say his opinion is Tanoi, is machlekes Tanoi. Why? Because the time we learn the Bryce that says, Soichi te'enim. Someone has fig branches, ubehen te'enim, and on the branches there's figs. Or he has prachilin, he has vines, ubehen anav, and on the vines there's grapes. Or he has kashan, he has straw, ubehen shivom, and on them there's the ears of grain. Or he has machpadis, he has the date branches, ubehen tamar, and on them there's dates. Cool, in all these cases, if you have more of the refuse, you have more of the straw, of the branch, more than the food item, Sure, it's mikasher for schach, because you have more of you can't use food as a schach, but here you have its bottle in the roiv of the psilas. But if you don't have the majority of the psilas, then still it's going to be invalid. Now, they seem to say very similar, but there's one difference that's very integral. The others, they say, no, only if you have on the straw more than the stem, which is, you need to have more than the stem and on the food item. So not only is it enough that you have to have psilas merubah al, you also have to have more than the stem. That also needs to have bittul, because that's also mekabel tamar. So therefore, it's also not fit to be a schach. Says the Gemara, my love, this is what they're disagreeing about. The Marsa, but the Acherim, they hold Yeshlan Yadois. The stems have a locha as a yad, even when you're harvesting it for schach, because it has a locha like a food item. Marsa, but the Tanakama held, Eilan Yadois. It's not a yad like a Menashe. So you see, the halacha of Menashe is a machlekes tanoim. If this that you harvested for schach, if you consider the stem as connected to the food item to have a loch as yad or not, which would make it possible or not. Says the Gemara, no, according to Rabbi, that he says that if you're harvesting it for the grain, for the schach, it's not going to have a loch of yad. If you harvested grapes for the wine press, that it doesn't have a yad, but kaitzer, if you're harvesting for the schach, it's going to have a halach of yad. Vada tanoim. Yeah, for sure, according to him, it's going to be a machlekes tanoim, because according to him, you have to say that he's going to say like the Acherim, who hold that it does have halach as yad. But according to Tanakama, you can't explain like him, because Tanakama says it doesn't have halach of yad. And if you're going to say that the case Toma, we harvested for eating, and then you change your mind to use it as schach, for sure, then it should have been that it has a yad. And still the Tanakama said it doesn't. So obviously it's not like Rabbi. But that says the Gemara, Rabbi Menashe bar Gado, that he says that even when you're harvesting it for schach, it does not have halacha as a yad. Milim Tanoi. Do we have to say that's machlekes tanoim to say that he's going to say only like the Tanakama, but the Achim would be disagreeing? Or can you explain the Brisa that you harvested actually for eating, which obviously when you harvest for eating, the stem is considered that you want to hold on to the grapes. It would be considered as part of it in Mekabel Tumah, but then you change your mind later on for schach. And that's why the Achim say it has a loch of yad. When you're harvesting for schach, maybe even the Achim would agree that it would not have a loch as yad. That's what the Gemara concludes. Yes, Rabbi Menashe would say, no, the Kulam Esav, everyone holds hakoitz l'schach enu yadis. If you're harvesting for the schach, it does not have a loch as a yad. Why not? Because we said they don't want to have this thing as part of the schach. The schach, you only want the thing that's not mekabel tumah. What are we talking about here? We first harvested because we wanted to eat it. Oh, you wanted to eat it, then it has halacha as part of the food item. But and then they changed their mind to use v'schach. That's the machlekes where we have. The Tanakama holds it doesn't have a halacha of yad because this that you change your mind to use it for schach. So that was mavafli machshava of food item. Achem hold no, it has halacha as a yad because it's already too late. You already harvested for the halacha of a food to eat it, so it retains its halacha as a yad. But it's not necessarily that this is a machlekes tanoim. Could be everyone holds like he holds that it does not have halacha as a yad. If you were koitzer l'sichuch, but we were talking about you koitzer la'achila, then you change your mind for sichuch. Does your changing your mind have the ability to remove it from the halachic status of a yad? That's what the Gemara's continuation on the next lines going into the next daf regarding this halacha about what would go ahead and change it or remove it from its status of a yad. But that's how the Gemara is explaining right now. That's not necessarily machlekes tanoim, and everyone could be like a Rabbi Menashe bar Gado. I can do anything with hosting us.